El-Wardany at breakfast. BBC
Radio London.
Now, you heard there in the news bulletin the conversation about the Windrush scandal. It's a conversation we've returned to time and time again here on BBC Radio London, and certainly one we will continue to return to because it is so important. It affected so many communities here in London, and it's a conversation that continually needs to be had. Now, there is a man who was asked to take a DNA test by the government to prove that his relationship with his father was in fact real. And it was all part of a compensation application. Now, the claimant in question was Dijon Jagaru Brian, and the BBC have now been told that he won't have to provide that evidence that he was initially requested for. Lawyers have called this request completely traumatic. Now, our community affairs correspondent Adina Campbell met with Dijon Jagaru Brian and his father Anthony Brian and has this report.
It's another slap in the face, you know.
When 39-year-old Dijon Jagaru Brian received this letter from the Home Office about his Windrush compensation claim, he was stunned. He's one of thousands of British Windrush descendants.
They even asked if we could track down the midwife who actually helped bring me into this world. And to me, when I read it, I thought it was ridiculous. When I told my mom, she said she couldn't believe it. I had to actually send her a screenshot for her to believe it. Me submitting a DNA test doesn't change the fact of what I've gone through. I've suffered watching my dad being held in prison. I've suffered going through the steps that I needed to do in order for him to get his stay in the UK.
Anthony Brian, I'm arresting you on suspicion of being an illegal resident.
Talking about
On behalf of the Home Office.
His dad's story was recently turned into a BBC drama.
Put him in the back.
Anthony Brian came to the UK from Jamaica when he was 8. Despite living, working and raising his family in London for more than 50 years, he was wrongly detained twice and almost deported in 2017. He's now on medication for a serious lung condition and spent 5 years fighting for compensation. Speaking from Jamaica, he says it hurts to see his son go through the same process.
I had to hang up on him and ring him back because I was so upset by it. I couldn't talk to him at the time. It felt degrading. It felt like, once again, the Home Office is trying to insult your intelligence and everything, because with that, you'd think that you had this son 40 years ago. The documents say yes, he's a son.
That was our community affairs correspondent Adina Campbell meeting with Dijon Jagaru Brian and his father Anthony Brian. The Home Office has now confirmed to the BBC that Dijon Jagaru Brian does not now have to provide DNA evidence, and says that claims for the Windrush compensation scheme are considered on their individual merits, and that it remains committed to making sure those who are eligible receive the compensation they deserve. Now, later on in the programme, in about an hour's time, I'm going to be speaking to the lawyer representing the family. But first, I'm joined by Patrick Vernon, a Windrush campaigner. A very good morning to you, Patrick.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us for this conversation. Just remind us the history. What is the history with Dijon's father, Anthony Brian?
Well, Anthony Brian, he's probably one of the most high-profile cases connected with the Home Office Windrush scandal back in 2018. He was detained at Yar's detention centre, where he was there for a number of weeks with the view of being deported back to Jamaica, despite the fact that he came to Britain as a child. And this applied to thousands of people who came to Britain between the period of 1950s, 60s up to the 1973 Immigration Act, which was the cut-off point for people coming over. And he came as a child. He worked, he was a painter decorator, had his own business, raised a family. And it was portrayed in the BAFTA award-winning documentary, Sitting in Limbo. And you think that the Home Office, he's been liaising with the Home Office the last several years about his own claim and his family's claims. He's already lost, by the way, a son as a result of this. And he's got serious long-term health conditions because of the stress and trauma, which again is further re-traumatizing the whole family. This is completely outrageous. And again, this is another reason why the compensation scheme should be removed from the Home Office.
Okay, so just to your point about the compensation scheme being removed from the Home Office, who then should handle it in your view, Patrick?
Well, either it could be another part of government, or it could be an independent agency. The point is that the Home Office were the perpetrators of the scandal in the first place. They're treating the Windrush survivors and victims no differently how they were first treated prior to the scandal being exposed in 2018, as when Theresa May was forced to apologise for what the government had done to the Windrush victims. The evidential burden, as well as the lack of care. Remember, these are traumatised people, and the way that they are treated as if they're almost like going to a pound shop. It's just outrageous. So therefore, it should be removed. It's just, I've been working on a project with University College London with Assistant Professor Michelle Burgess called The Ties That Bind Us. There's an exhibition for your listeners at the Black Culture Archives in Brixton. That exhibition highlights the trauma and the mental health impact of the Home Office scandal. I do urge your listeners, if you're in London, in Brixton, to go to the Black Culture Archives and see the evidence that we've captured for research work, interviews, and also photography about the scandal on mental health.
Patrick, it seems like a remarkable request. We heard Dijon being asked to provide not only DNA evidence, but if he could somehow find the midwife that was present at his birth to then somehow testify. It's a remarkable request. Quite startling for people to hear that.
But this is the rationale of the Home Office. They believe that all the Windrush victims are going to make spurious claims. They're going to try and fiddle or whatever, or lie about the applications, and it's actually further from the truth.
Is that why you think they asked for that request? Because they think people are trying to play the system and get money when perhaps they might have no ties to the family? Is that what in your view, is that what you think the Home Office think?
The Home Office have this, they don't respect the Windrush generation at all. They do not listen, and if they did, they wouldn't be asking these lines of inquiry, asking for evidence. They don't understand the impact of the scandal, the hostile environment policy on people's minds and bodies. Officially, we know over 54 people have died connected to the scandal, dying of hypertension, cancer, which is a causal factor, and increasing evidence base that there's links between the way that they are treated by the Home Office and the impacts on their health and well-being. This happens not only to the primary claimant, someone like Anthony, who has to spend a few months a year in Jamaica now because of the impact on him and his family, but now it's affecting his own children and his partner. I think this tells you that in the context of discrimination, this is another example of discrimination and structural racism, which the Home Office is still perpetuating after they were exposed 6 years ago as a result of the scandal.
But Patrick, I'm just trying to get to the heart of why the Home Office would be making these requests. Has anyone, in your experience and in all the campaigning that you've done, has anyone ever tried to wrongfully claim as a Windrush, as a member of the Windrush generation?
I can't really say that. I mean, all I know, all the people I have supported and know about the cases are genuine cases. They're all genuine cases. The problem is that the Home Office do not see them as genuine cases. There's a degree of suspicion, which again highlights the lack of cultural sensitivity and downright racism practices. And Wendy Williams, who was commissioned by the government, ran the Lessons Learned review. Her report made it very clear. She didn't call the Home Office institutionally racist. They were institutionally ignorant. This example, unfortunately, to me, proved that they're institutionally racist, and the government have failed to implement all the recommendations, as well as withdrawing 3 of the recommendations, so much so that a number of organisations, such as Black Equity Organisation and Unison, and one individual had to go to the Royal Court of Justice for a judicial review around implementing recommendations. It's very clear to all your listeners that the Home Office is still failing the Windrush generation. the government are bearing their hands, and I urge James Cleverly, the Home Secretary, to do something about this. There should have been a written apology to Dijon and Anthony and his family.
Has there been any apology to Dijon?
The only apologies I'm aware of is when Saved Javid was Home Secretary. He actually met some Windrush victims, and he actually wrote to a couple of them apologising. But that is it.
But the Home Office have said now that that Dijon Sugar O'Brien won't have to provide evidence. Is that?
But that's not one.
Pardon?
But why? It's only because of your intervention. If you hadn't did this as a news story, they would still be harassing him and his family even now. And sadly, why does it require the BBC and journalists, and Adina Campbell's done a fantastic job as a reporter over the years, to expose the Home Office for them to then rectify it? They haven't learned the lessons of the scandal.
Patrick, do you know of anyone else who's been asked to provide a DNA test?
This is the first time I realise I've come across this. But remember, there are some victims who may not want to come to the media and share their stories, to be quite honest. So we don't really know that. All I do know is that I know Anthony very well. I'm good friends with him. I know his family very well. And I can imagine impact this re-traumatises them, and those relive horrible memories. And that is why the Home Office is not fit for purpose. That is why the compensation scheme should be removed from the Home Office. And there should be a written apology to Dijon and the family and other victims who've been treated in this callous and insensitive way.
Patrick, we've also seen, of course, in the news of late, the claimants from the Post Office Horizon scandal and how they've been treated has been something that they've spoken about as well. Do you think similar forces were at play here, or is this just a case of government adamantly not wanting to give money back and trying to hold on to it?
There are lots of similarities between the Post Office scandal and the affected blood scandal too. But the difference, I think, with all due respect, is whereas those compensation schemes for the affected blood victims and the Post Office scandal are 10 times more generous compared to the compensation given to the Windrush victims.
Why do you think they're paying Windrush victims less?
Unfortunately, the Home Office don't care about black people. They don't care about the history
Do
of
you
the
think it's racism?
Absolutely. No, I mean, I've been campaigning this for the last several years. I've come across so many individuals and families been affected by that. There is a clear pattern in this. The very fact that they're asking for not only a DNA test, but evidential records of who was the midwife.
Yeah. When you...
It tells you that it tells you a clear pattern, but that has not fundamentally changed from the time when the scandal was exposed in 2018.
Patrick, when you speak to those Windrush victims, those ones that you mentioned who are traumatised, who've gone through so much to this point, do they also agree with you? Do they think this is just, call it what it is, it's racism? That's what's happening.
Oh, well, some of them go further than I do. Some of them actually say that the Home Office want us to die. They don't want to give us any money at all, they rather want us to die. And that is a very strong sentiment from the Windrush victims and their families, and the very fact that they're asking in 2024 more evidence to prove. It's an insult. It's a real insult to the Windrush generation and to our contribution to Britain. And, they need to... sorry.
No, that's okay. Patrick, I wanted to just ask you finally, you mentioned that there will be people who don't want to speak to the media. I'm sure there are people within the people that you've spoken to or people who've been part of the Windrush generation who don't even want to bother with the compensation because they don't want to go through, as you've said, the trauma and the stress and the trials of trying to get that compensation off the Home Office, because from what we've seen, it's certainly not given easily. What would you say to those people? Do you think they should still go through the process regardless of how difficult and traumatic it is because that's their right? Or what do you advise in these instances?
Well, it's definitely their right, and there are organisations, there's Action for Race Equality, they're a national charity, they've got funding, and they've been funding a range of nearly just under 25 organisations around England and Wales and Scotland to give free advocacy advice. There's law firms who are doing this as well. But the sad reality is the government have not provided any proper legal aid or legal assistance, which is again different from the post office scandal and the Fed Blood scandal. They can have access to legal aid, whereas Windrush victims don't. So this is a pattern. It's a degradation and a humiliation, and that's why a lot of people still haven't come forward. And despite all the nice warm words and statements from the Home Office, they don't really care about black people and the Munch generation.
Okay, well, the Home Office and a representative from the Home Office is not here to respond to that comment, but I will say that the Home Office have confirmed that Mr. Jagaru Brian is not required to provide DNA evidence. They said that claims for the Windrush compensation scheme are considered on their individual merits and that it remains committed to making sure those who are eligible receive the compensation they deserve. That's what they've said. Patrick, I appreciate all your
every time, so it's nothing new.
Okay, well, I appreciate your insights, and I'm grateful that you joined us this morning, Patrick. Thank you so much for your time.
No problem at all. Please check out the Black Culture Archives, the exhibition Ties That Bind Us, and you can learn more about the mental health impact and trauma on the Windrush victims. I do urge your listeners and support them, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Patrick. The Black Culture Archives, indeed, we talk about them a lot on this programme, do incredible work, and they've got some wonderful exhibitions.